Krazi here from the Red Moon Saloon, and this is my first part of my guide slash tutorials to creating your own fantasy world. There are many reasons to create your own fantasy world, but the main three are for video game design, tabletop gaming, or story and book writing. I have experience in all three of these fields over the past 10 years or so, and have had some people asking me for advice, so hopefully this series can help some inspiring designers and authors get a running head start. Okay, so what's important when you're creating your fantasy world? I have a list here that I made of the 5 things that I believe are extremely helpful when you're creating your fantasy world. So, number one, structure. You need to have a foundation for your world. So what do I mean by that? I mean, you need to have a clear outline of exactly what excuse me, what your world is. And the reason why this is important is because if you just start writing, if you just start creating an adventure, if you just start designing a story or a quest or something, then you can just make things up off the top of your head. You can make up characters, you can make up places, you can make up plots, and that works great for the very first time that you do it. But as you start making different plots, you start making different adventures in your world, then you're gonna find that things aren't gonna cross-reference each other. It's almost impossible to keep things in bounds with each other if you're just writing off the top of your head. And what's going to happen is your players, if it's involved in tabletop gaming or a video game, your players or your readers, if you're writing a book or a story, they're going to catch on. They're going to see that things don't cross-reference each other. They're gonna see these inconsistencies, and it appears to be sloppy and random, and it's a major turnoff. So what you need to do is create your foundation first. The second most important thing is your interactions, and this goes hand in hand with the first thing, structures. So what do I mean by interactions? I mean the relationships between your different entities within your fantasy world. Things like your towns, your cities, your villages, your nations, your city-states, factions, races, whatever. You need to design the interactions between them. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about trade between towns and villages and nations. Their attitudes towards each other is very important. History for your factions, your races, your cities. By building all of these things first, you're gonna have a lot of things to reference as you're writing your plots and your adventures. You're gonna have things to reference, so then you won't ever have to go back and make sure that things are synced up together, because they will be from the start. So those are the first 2 important things. The third is building your pool of characters. So as you're building your foundation and as you're building your interactions, be actively making your pool of characters. So anytime that something pops up, like there might be this important character in a history for a city, or you're thinking about the different places within a town or a city and the different factions and stuff. Be actively making these characters, whether it's a nobleman or a head of a warrior guild or a tribesman or a great warrior or a mage, whatever. As you're creating your foundation, be making characters, and you want to be really brief when you make these characters. Give them very rough outlines, very rough plots and backgrounds, just really quickly, and you're gonna find that you're gonna be making pools of dozens, maybe even hundreds of characters, and that's great because once you start writing your story, once you start writing your adventures and stuff, you're going to be able to freely pick from a variety of characters to interact with. And then once you're getting these characters involved in storylines and stuff, then you can start fleshing them out more, giving them more, painting more detail, if you will, on the characters as you get them and getting them involved. Okay, so this character is going to be part of my story, so now I'm going to start fleshing them out. So a lot of times you're not going to use many of the characters, but it's going to make everything much, much easier if you have this active pool of characters already done. The fourth most important thing, start everything from the ground up. So what I mean is, every time you're building a town or a faction or a character, even when you're writing your plots and your stories, start from the ground up. Make everything very, very basic first, and then start adding layers of detail on top of it. It makes everything 100% easier. So as you're creating these things, first you have a town on a river, and then you can make it a fishing town, and then you can make it a fishing town with a strong military, and then, or whatever. So that's just one example. So you paint these layers of detail on it, and things become much, much easier to start everything from the ground up. The fifth most important thing is your tools. So this is 2014, and we have lots of tools available for us to use on the computer. So I'm going to go over some of these tools that we can use. So why would you use tools? So like famous authors like J.R. Tolkien and other famous fantasy authors from back in the day, 50, 70 years ago. It took them years of writing and map making and sketching and tons and tons of notes that they wrote down, and that's great if you want to take years to create your world. But nowadays we can do these things. We can create our own fantasy world in weeks, even days. So let's take advantage of all the tools that we have. So I'm going to go over some of the tools. One of the most important tools is your map makers. Now, there's a lot of free map makers out there, and I've tried almost every map maker that there is, and I can pretty much tell you that all of the free map makers are pretty junk. So if you're working with a low budget, let's say you don't have any spare cash, the one place that you should really invest a little bit of money in is a map making program, and that could be all the money that you spend. If you're doing this as a hobby or something, do invest in a good map maker. The second tool would be an avatar creator, and I don't have much experience. I haven't tried a lot of avatar creators, but I do have one that I like pretty well. It's free, so I'll show you that when the time comes. The third tool would be Wikipedia. So Wikipedias are very, very useful. They're 100% better than just keeping notes in a spiral notebook. You don't have to flip through pages or anything like that. With the Wikipedia, you can basically set up a table of contents, and you can click on the different links to go to the different pages. And as you're looking at the different pages and the descriptions, you can highlight words and have them link to other pages. And it's very, very helpful to use a Wikipedia. I highly recommend it. Learn how to build your own Wikipedia. There's a few. There's a bunch of Wikipedias that they're free. So I highly recommend you learn how to build your own Wikipedia. It makes things 100% easier. Another tool would be a random name generator. And for the most part, a lot of times you're going to have names that you have in mind that you want to use for characters, towns, like rivers and stuff. But a lot of times you get into something that I like to call like a naming slump, and you kind of go blank-minded trying to figure out a good name for something, and that's where these random name generators come in. And there's a variety of different websites that randomly generate fantasy type names, and you don't a lot of times you won't use any of the randomly generated names, but just reading off different randomly generated names will give you an idea for a name that you really want to use. So just reading randomly generated names is very helpful when you're in these naming slumps. The last tool I want to talk about isn't really a tool, because it's a person, but I would still categorize it and just for the sake of organization, categorize it in a tool, and that would be an artist. So there's two ways that you can get an artist. Now this is if you're not an artist yourself. If you are an artist yourself, then that's great. I still highly recommend that you use map making and avatar creating tools, so you can do the bulk of your work, and then you can go back and sketch things over. But I'm rambling. There's two ways to get an artist, and the first way is the simplest way, and that's just to hire an artist to do work, and you explain to them what you want and you pay for it. But I don't recommend you do that unless you have a lot of money and you want to spend money on somebody to do that stuff. What I would recommend instead is to find an artist to collaborate with you, and it's very simple because you make friends with people. I have several really good friends now that I met because they're artists and they wanted to collaborate with me for designing fantasy worlds, and it's fairly simple. I mean, we got Facebook, we got RPG forums, we have game designing forums. There's all kinds of ways to reach out and meet artists, and a lot of times artists are just inspiring artists, hobbyists. They're students, they're freshly graduated students, and they want to build a portfolio. And even if you have a friend that's an artist or an inspiring artist and they're not too sure about it, you can explain to them that by building a portfolio, that's how they're going to get more involved in being an artist for a career. You need to have a portfolio. So the thing that looks really good for an artist portfolio is having multiple pieces of art that are part of the same project. It shows that they are willing to collaborate as a team or just to work with another person to help them create something. So yeah, those are the most important things as an overview to creating your fantasy world, and those are the most helpful things. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump into creating a world just for the purpose of this tutorial. I guess I'll start off with just creating a land and using these important points that we talked about. So I will see you in the next video, and I hope this was helpful.